Irish Media Network. We entertain.
Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to Irish Media Network Sports Update. I'm your host, Joe Caulfield. Welcome to the show. Now, this week we're going to be talking all things MMA with UFC Fight Night 174, kicking off on the weekend. We've loads and loads to talk about in the preview to this, and joining me this week to do so is presenter of the Bash MMA, Niall McGrath. Thanks so much for joining me, mate. How are things?
I'm good, Joe. Excited about the weekend's fight. So, been a busy week, obviously, with Rhys getting that contract to fight Chimaev, and obviously Joe Duffy retiring. So, a week of mixed emotions, I'd say. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to tomorrow night because there's a strong European interest over in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, it seems that's been the case for the kind of the four events that have been held for the Fight Island events. In terms of kind of Joe Duffy and Rhys McKee, I'd love to kind of chat about those specifically, particularly about the interview you did with Joe Duffy a little bit later in the show. Kicking off, first and foremost, I'd love to talk about the main cards. Whittaker versus Till, unbelievable main event. Whittaker coming back for his first fight after losing his title to Israel Adesanya. Darren Till possibly fighting for a title shot if he was to win. Tell me what we have to look forward to in this fight.
Oh, it's a cracking fight. And the first thing I sort of want to say is, this fight was originally supposed to be scheduled for Dublin. So it's very, very disappointing and hard to sort of register that it's taken place this week. But, two guys that are, absolutely synonymous with that middleweight division. Obviously, Robert, a former champion, really, really good, strong, fast, quick, accurate boxer. Then you've Darren Till, his precision power. It's just a cracking stylistic matchup on paper. We've two guys, and I can guarantee you this fight predominantly is going to stay in the feet, and I think we're going to see a finish on Saturday night. Two guys who've had a lot of respect for one another coming into this bout. It's not often like Darren Till to really be chilled out and cool. And I know Darren a long time, and he's sort of taken a different mental approach in this fight. And Robert's been the same. He's openly admitted he's had issues and battles with depression. So it's great to see him back, obviously after losing his world title. But I think we're very much on the pedestal here that if one guy can go out and make a statement, they might be getting another shot at Israel Adesanya, and particularly Darren Till, because Darren's obviously only just recently moved up from welterweight. So if he can go out there, he made a statement against Kelvin Gastelum in his last fight, his debut at 185. So if he can go out there and make a statement against a former champion, it puts him right in line for a title shot. I think the UFC might be a little bit more hesitant if Robert is to win, because I think Israel dominated him so much when he did lose his title. So there's a lot on the line for both guys here. It's sort of a career trajectory fight in that division, and I'm expecting a finish, and I think we're going to see a really, really good stand-up battle. But I think maybe Robert Whittaker has the greater skill set here in terms of he can use his wrestling really if he wants to as well. We saw that against Jacare. We saw it against Yoel Romero, and Darren Till is obviously a guy who likes to stay in his feet, cut the angles, and look for that power and finishing strike. So fascinating contest, really is, Joe.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. One of the things that you certainly mentioned there a little bit was after the last fight, Robert Whittaker did come out and he said that he'd not fallen out of love with the sport itself, but he was going through some personal issues, and it had kind of detracted a little bit of his enjoyment of what he does for a living. In his pre-fight interviews this week, he really seems to be back in great form. Like it's a pleasure to watch him because he seems to be energized, rejuvenating it, and loving it again.
Yeah, I think that's a major part of mixed martial arts, and I think we don't often see as someone who looks on at the sport and you're not really involved in the circles, how much effort and time and dedication these guys put into the fight camps. And I think Robert had so much going on in his life over the last 5 years. When he won the title, he had 3 kids in that time. He talked about that during the week, and maybe his full focus wasn't on mixed martial arts. And I think he was just maybe a little bit lost in his personal life as well, adjusting to having children and things like that. And maybe his eye went off the prize a little bit. But yeah, I totally agree. It's great to see Robert with such a smile, such a vibrant demeanor coming into this fight. And I think both guys are playing a game, though, to a certain extent. I've talked to Darren a couple of months ago on our show as well, on MMA fighting before we moved over to Goalhanger. But Darren has really sort of been trying to get under their skin by playing the nice guy and poking at them gently. So I think this is all calm before the storm on Saturday night. But yeah, listen, I have to, sort of affirm that stance that it is great to see Robert back in such wonderful spirits. Definitely 100%.
If you had to pick a winner, who would you be leaning towards, and why? Who's going to edge it? What is going to edge it in this fight?
I'm still on the fence about it. I'm not great at picking fights. I don't like picking fights, but I think, the longer the fight goes, I think it's going to suit Robert more because of his wrestling and because of the different facets he can implement in the game. He's very, very quick on his feet, very quick boxing, very good boxing. But Darren then has that one-shot power that can really land and end a fight. I'm just slightly edging towards Robert at the moment. I think just his pace could be a problem for Darren to get after him. But listen, I'm very, very conflicted in my views about that fight. But I think we're in for a cracker. I think we're in for one of the fights of the year tomorrow. I really can't wait for it. And I think out of the 4 Fight Island cards that we've had, obviously the Masvidal Usman fight to start it all off, I think this is probably the second best card on it. And I'm expecting finishes top to bottom on this card tomorrow night. It really is. It's a cracking fight card for European MMA fans, because obviously we've been starved. The European fighters couldn't travel to the US, so this is their international ground where we're finally getting back to some form of normality with European fighters in the UFC.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a great way to end the Fight Island series.
Brilliant.
For the time being, I'd be extremely surprised if we don't see a return to Abu Dhabi in the coming months. But it's a great card to end it on. Yeah,
I think the talk is September, October, that they're, I've heard that in the grapevine that they're going to go back to Abu Dhabi and potentially it could become the home of the UFC for the next year anyway, because I know they're having obviously issues in Las Vegas because the virus is popping back up again and there's issues there. So I would expect a return to Abu Dhabi before the end of the year, 100%.
Great to see it. And it's it is a great platform for European fighters like Rhys McKee, who we're going to come on to talk about now, who was pulled out of Cage Warriors. It seems that a lot of more European fighters are getting a shot in the international stage via Fight Island.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you've a guy like Rhys, and we'll talk about him in a moment. But the fact of the matter is, because we've had a number of cards cancelled, the UFC had to rejig everything. Obviously, they couldn't have guys going over and quarantine in the US for 2 weeks. So basically, the whole European roster and a lot of the other international fighters were on hold. So I don't, it's obviously a bit of a surprise Rhys got signed, because the UFC even said it themselves. They didn't look to be signing fighters because of the lack of cards. But yeah, these guys need fights. And this, you see the quick turnarounds now, obviously with Chimaev, he fought 2 weeks ago as well. These guys are hungry to fight. And there's still going to be a lot of guys, from Europe that are looking to get back in there. But it's been great. The last 3 weeks have been great for the European guys. And I'm delighted for a lot of the guys I know as well. There's a few absolute studs on this card tomorrow night making their debuts from the UK and Ireland. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, and no better point to start talking about Rhys McKee. You were saying you're excited. I'm excited just to talk about this. McKee versus Chimaev. Tell me, you have a long-standing personal relationship with Rhys McKee. So tell me a little bit about him and his journey to here, and then what his chances are against Chimaev.
It's been a wild journey for Rhys, and someone actually just posted I did an interview with Rhys after his pro debut when he took on John Redmond 5 years ago, and Rhys actually moved up 2 weight classes. He was originally, believe it or not, fighting at featherweight, 145 pounds. So he moved up 2 weight classes to take his pro debut up to 170 pounds, where obviously he's fighting at tomorrow night. But it just shows you the kind of guy Rhys is. He's always said it. He's always believed in himself. He's prepared for this moment his whole career. I've, as you said there, I've known Rhys for a long, long time. And it's almost sort of, I don't want to bring Conor McGregor's name in, but you sort of believe when he says something to you, it's going to come through. And he has that sort of aura about him. And he's come through some incredible battles in his life. Another fighter who's fighting on the card tomorrow night, Jai Herbert, who suffered his sole career loss, pro career loss at the hands of Rhys McKee in the build-up when Rhys fought him in Bama. I think it was about 8 weeks before the fight, Rhys McKee's father suddenly passed away, and he still took that fight, which just shows you what kind of guy Rhys is. His mentality is exceptionally strong. He's a strong-willed guy, and listen, the odds are stacked against him here in this fight, but you know, when I see some of the lines on the bookmakers, I'm sort of going, you'll never get odds like that again, ever, for Rhys McKee to knock out a guy. So if you're a betting man, maybe have a little cheeky punt on it. But it just shows you what kind of guy Rhys is, that he can overcome adversity like that and still cut his weight, do the whole fight camp, and ultimately go in there and throw down.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Obviously, having the personal interest for Northern Irish fighter, and going in against Khamzat Chimaev, who had his first fight in the UFC 2 weeks ago, was very successful, and has now gone for a 2-week turnaround. Is that a bit is he overstretching himself, do you think? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a
good opportunity for McKee to take him at this time.
Well, that's probably what a lot of people aren't talking about. You know, Chimaev fought 2 weeks ago. It was a very, very dominant performance against John Phillips. John is obviously, that was a fight at 185 pounds as well. I don't think people are mentioning that he's actually coming down back to 170. So he's to stay out there, you know, train, cut more weight, which could be an issue. You know, the weigh-ins are on shortly. So that's going to be interesting to see. You know, guys like that normally wouldn't take a fight if they weren't confident making the weight. So I'm sure he will be on weight. But in relation to that, yeah, I think there is a little bit of arrogance from Chimaev. I think he's that kind of guy. Brush, very similar to Khabib and his skill set, as I said off air. You know, he's a really good grappler, likes to go out in the front foot, good striking, probably not as good as Rhys McKee's. And I think that's where the area we can catch him. But the problem is, can Rhys, you know, stay on his feet in this fight? If he can stay on his feet, Rhys has a chance in this fight. But I think early on you're going to see how this fight's going to pan out. But listen, you never know. It's mixed martial arts. We've seen it against Jorge Masvidal and Ben Askren, 7 seconds. Anything can happen in that first round. And, you know, maybe Rhys isn't getting the credit he deserves coming in here, because we've talked, everyone's known on the European scene that Rhys was ultimately going to sign for the UFC someday. It's probably come sooner than any of us expected in terms of 6-day turnaround. But as I said, Rhys can and has faced incredible adversity during his mixed martial arts career. So, listen, I wouldn't bet against it. I wouldn't bet on it, but it's going to be, I think, a success for Rhys if he can go past the second, third round in this fight with Chimaev. And he obviously has that 4-fight deal. So he doesn't have an awful lot to lose. Yeah.
It would be interesting as well to see if mentality does play a part in it. Chimaev coming in off the back of a massive first win, full of confidence, possibly overly confident, touching on arrogant, and Rhys McKee coming in with that real solid mental resilience and belief in himself, gets a quick strike in the first round, he could put him out. Who knows?
Yeah, 100%. That's the way. I think, yeah, it's the beauty of the sport, and I think that's the way Rhys McKee's going to be looking at it as well. We saw his last fight against Hakan Foss in Cage Warriors down in Cork, that, you know, Rhys is that touch of death, as we say, that, you know, he can flick a jab and he can literally knock out a guy with a jab. That's how powerful Rhys McKee's hands are. He did that against Foss. And, you know, Chimaev, if he shoots in and mistimes it and Rhys throws a knee, you just never know. And it's exciting for Irish fans as well, because obviously Joseph Duffy, you know, retired last week, announced his retirement. It's sort of a changing of the guard in Irish MMA. And I think, you know, obviously Conor McGregor retired. He's the only active fighter from this island. So it's exciting. You can see online the traction that this is doing. You can see the newspapers, everyone's picking this up, and people are generally interested in seeing how Rhys does tomorrow night. And listen, we'll wish him all the best, and it's a good fight for the viewers. Exciting main cards on a world stage. It's all the makings of a massive upset.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. I honestly can't wait to see it. Talking about the rest of the main card, because look, it's a fantastic main card. If you were to pick out a couple of the really kind of big matchups, particularly in terms of what you think would be interesting, good matchups, who are some of the ones you would highlight?
Definitely, I think Fabrizio Verdum against Alexander Gustafsson. Alexander coming back from his retirement again, but he's going up a weight class to heavyweight from 205 pounds against the former UFC heavyweight champion Fabrizio Verdum, who's 45 years of age now. I think that's a fascinating fight. These guys have, Alex talked during the week about they used to train together, and Alex said he broke his nose, and there's a little bit of talk from Alex there that we normally wouldn't see. So that's a really interesting narrative going into that fight, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Alex adapts to heavyweight and translates that power over against a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts and former ACDC world champion in Verdum. So stylistically, I think that's a fantastic matchup. It's going to be interesting to see where Alex is, the former title challenger to John Jones. And then we've, as I spoke about earlier on, Jai Herbert, who Rhys McKee beat back in the Bama days. He makes his UFC debut tomorrow night against Francisco Trinaldo. And I think you need to watch out for Jai as well. Jai has really, really heavy hands. Trinaldo, obviously, a UFC veteran at this stage. He's numerous amount of fights. It's a tough fight, but I think Jai is a guy people need to don't sleep on. This guy, he's they don't call him the black country banger for nothing. He goes in there and he throws down. So very much looking forward to that. And then you've a whole host of guys.
What a nickname, the Black Country Banger.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, he's from up in the Midlands in the UK. So, but he's a guy that that's just been phenomenal in the Cage Warriors scene, and former lightweight champion there. So that's one definitely look out for. And Tom Aspinall as well, a teammate of Darren Till's. He's a really, really promising prospect. And listen, top to bottom, it's really, really good. We've Nathaniel Wood as well kicking off the card, one of Brad Pickett's guys. Really exciting amount of European fighters on this card. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Really excited for it. I'm also looking forward to Shogun and Little Nog. It's the co-main event, and again, it's just kind of a nice. I just think it's a really nice way to end Fight Island. Two guys with such long careers.
It is.
44 years old. That's going to be a great matchup.
Yeah, it's insane that those two guys are still around. I think, Maurizio as well, former champion. And it's just one of those strange fights that you wouldn't expect to see, but we're seeing it. It should be fun. It's a fun fight, but I'm really, really interested to see Verdum and Gustafsson. I think that's, where we can gauge if Alexander Gustafsson is going to make a genuine push for that heavyweight title. And, who would bet against it? He's fought Daniel Cormier before. He's, John Jones is talking him moving up to heavyweight. So I think that will open up more interesting, big money fights for the UFC if Alexander Gustafsson can go in there and win that fight in his heavyweight debut. Yeah,
he kind of has no more than Rhys McKee. He has everything to gain. And Darren Till, like, they're all kind of in a position where if they win this fight, it launches a huge amount of prospects for them for their future.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys
in terms of matchups.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys in that position. Jai Herbert the same. Like Trinaldo is a guy who's beaten the likes of Paul Felder, and he's been around for light years. I've said you've other guys right in the cusp there of really sort of getting these big name fights. Rhys McKee. If Rhys McKee was to go in tomorrow night and make a statement, he's off to the races as far as I'm concerned. Same with Gustafsson. Same with Darren Till. It just shows you the talent that is on this side of the pond. It used to be, a number of years ago, all the Americans, all the Europeans can't wrestle. It's very much sort of doing a 180 now, and the Europeans are taking that forefront. And I expect a few upsets tomorrow night, like I really do. And I think, top to bottom, it's stacked. I'm absolutely I'm excited. I haven't been sleeping too well the last month, mind you, but that's pretty standard from staying up and having to watch the fights. But listen, it's a great way to finish it, and it's a phenomenal card, it really is.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible and very intriguing with some of the matchups as we've spoken about there. Moving slightly over then to Joe Duffy that you spoke about a little bit now. He was on the Bash, your podcast, which there'll be a link for anyone who wants to catch the full interview. There'll be a link in the show notes here. So tell me a little bit about Joe Duffy as an Irish MMA fighter and what he has done in his career and brought to the UFC. Joseph
is just, I think the one thing people are going to remember about Joseph Duffy, anyone who's dealt with him or had any dealings with him, what an utterly fantastic representative he has been for Irish mixed martial arts. A true gentleman, an unbelievable person, and an exceptionally talented fighter. He's just been a little bit unfortunate in the things that have happened. I think, when he beat Julian Basuge and signed for the UFC from Cage Warriors, that, he built up his way up in his first number of fights, and he got to that Dustin Poirier fight, and that was obviously scheduled for Dublin's main event and fell out a number of days beforehand. I think it was literally the night beforehand. They had to, remove that fight from the card. That was headlining the event. And I think just if one or two things had panned out a little bit differently for Joseph Duffy, we could have potentially be talking about a rematch against Conor McGregor. It just never worked out for Joe. He had a lot of injuries, shoulder injuries, rib injuries, and it's just been very hard, I think, for Joe on a mental level to get back down and sort of reinvent himself and get a push going again. But what a fighter! Honestly, one of the most technically gifted stand-up guys I think we've ever had from this country. Former pro boxer as well, and an unbelievable martial artist. It's sad to see that he's gone, but I think knowing Joe and knowing what he's been saying over the last 18 months, that it is the correct time to call it a day. Because I think once you're a fighter and these words start coming up, the big O word, as they say, it's probably time to call it a day. And listen, Joe has handled himself with such dignity. He told us that, regardless of the size of any paycheck, he wouldn't like to sacrifice his pride. And I think that's just shows you what kind of guy Joseph Duffy is. It's always been about being a true martial artist. And I think he's conducted himself absolutely fantastically. And really, honestly, I've interviewed hundreds of fighters over the years, one of the true gentlemen of mixed martial arts. It's sad to see him go, but he's a wonderful representative for Irish mixed martial arts, definitely.
100%. I read his tweet in terms of retirement, and I just thought it was incredibly honest that he said, I think I have to realize that I don't have what it takes anymore. And everything that you said in terms of him being a gentleman and such an honest, honorable representative of Irish MMA couldn't be summed up better than that. Like, it takes an awful lot of courage to say something like that, and such
100%.
Yeah, such an incredible way to sign off. I'm not going to talk about it anymore because I would encourage anyone who's watching the show to go over to the Bash podcast and listen to the whole interview with you guys.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it's worth a listen. Just a fantastic guy and representative, as I said. And I wish him all the best in whatever he does. And I'm sure I'll be speaking to him again soon.
As do I. Look, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining me. And hopefully I'll be speaking to you again prior to some of the upcoming fights. Really, really looking forward to the fight. If I wasn't looking forward to it before now, this is really, really whetted my appetite for it. Thanks a million for joining us.
Thanks, lads. A pleasure anytime. Appreciate it.
Spot on, Niall. Cheers. And that's it, folks. Look, as I said, I am really looking forward to UFC Fight Night 174 after the chat with Niall. Thanks a million to him for joining me. As I said, you'll see in the show links, there is a link to The Bash, which is the podcast there with Peter Carroll, Niall McGrath, and Joe Duffy, who was on this week. For this week's show, that's all from us. Look after yourself. We'll see you next week. Look after yourself in the meantime.
Irish